Hi, welcome to the Breakfast Club. Josh here, normally with the channel ZZZ Giant Awake and the Recklessly Skeptical podcast. Links in the description to find me elsewhere. So, most of this movie is going to be spent both reflecting on and rebutting the video yesterday that was done by Wayne Watley. I'm going to recap it first in a lot shorter terms, and then I'm going to then kind of break it down and give my thoughts on it. So Wayne starts off with defining anarchy as being without rulers, that he likes dichotomies for teaching as well as for understanding. He considers himself a voluntarist. He can correct me on that. Which is just essentially that in the government you would have the option to opt out. He wants to make, he says that we practice anarchy in a form every day by any time we make a decision without consent. That's anarchy. Prehistoric times were without a state, in that the state, that believing that the state is necessary due to human nature is erroneous because we spent so much of human history time-wise without a state. He says that he's a pacifist and that might throw people off because pacifists seem like they would want the most police state or whatever, whereas you can be a pacifist and an anarchist. He believes that government, at least taxation nowadays, comes at the force of gunpoint, and essentially through violence or the threat thereof. He also says people who want more government want more coercion. He also stated that everything that we think that we need the government for can be done outside of coercion and without a centralized control. He talked about Joe's video earlier on. He said that political parties are equal to tribalism, essentially. That it wouldn't matter if the Cookie Monster were running as long as he was a Democrat. That Joe was stating that you should vote for the Cookie Monster if you're in that tribalistic mindset. To think that we can fix government with more government is pretty stupid, which is a direct quote. Statism is the deadliest religion. We worship any kind of backs this point up with we worship the flag and troops and buy into nationalism. Also, the number of people who have died is more than for any other religion. And then the final quote is that we just have to grow up. We have to get past the Democratic, Republican parties. They're all evil. They want more government and more coercion. So to kind of discuss certain fallacies before I get into it. An argument from emotion is an argument from that calls upon emotional aspect of an idea, such as saying that abortion is baby murder, when without using any science or other sources to back it up. You can certainly, the best writers certainly call upon emotional side of things, like think about the poor mother who's having to now carry a child full term when she was raped. Like that draws upon some emotions naturally. And then to back it up by saying, well, in the first trimester, the baby's not much more the baby, that it's not more than a conglomerate of cells. The fetus, it's not self-aware, it has no nervous system, it doesn't feel pain, all of that. So you back up the emotion with the reason. The emotion shouldn't take the place of the reason itself. Also, poisoning the well is using loaded terms or tying loaded terms to certain ideas. Such an example, I'm trying to think of one that's not related to this, is essentially anything to do with Hitler or the Nazis. You can say, well, Hitler believed such and such, therefore you like Hitler, or something to that effect. Essentially, you're tying your opponent to something more negative. So let me go through this. I know I'm at 5 minutes now, so I'm going to try and do this in less than 5 minutes. Anarchy is without rulers. I'll give that one. He likes dichotomies. The problem with dichotomies is they don't, not ever, resemble the actual real universe or real reality that we're interacting with. So while you can use dichotomies to kind of digest information, you need to make sure to broaden it. Hope that you decide to do so. Anytime we make a decision without consent is anarchy. Not true. That's like saying anytime you make a decision in a state area, a state-controlled area, you are supporting statism. It's the same fallacy. Anytime, essentially, where government matters is where it actually shows up, and so maybe I wouldn't go to a grocery store if I didn't know there were police around. It's not a fair way to think about it. Pacifism is compatible with anarchy, which could be true, but if somebody decided it wasn't the case, then what are you to do about it? I guess you would hire private people to go and murder or kill or take care of however you want to the guy who murdered your family member or whatever. There wouldn't be any assumed right way to handle it. So now this is one of the two that bothers me the most. And there's somebody else who I run in some same social circles as, who says taxation is theft, and that the only way you can get taxes is by gunpoint, and so forth and so on. So the only tax collection or government programs which require taxes at force of gunpoint, which is a loaded term. That's why I brought up poisoning the well beforehand. Most people do this voluntarily, and unfortunately we've all collectively decided that we're supporting the Constitution and we're voluntarily giving up that power, which unfortunately means that by physical jurisdiction that you would fall under that. And I'll have to do a breakdown of why that works out in political philosophy. And I guess I'll do that on my channel here shortly. I think I've done it somewhat recently, so I'll have to maybe link that video in the description. Everything that we think that we need the government for can be done outside of the coercion and centralized control. Now the problem with that is that the haves and have-nots, that power dynamic becomes more bigger. Like, if you don't understand that we haven't evolved from a place where mainly we were dealing with local governments through princes and princesses and lords and lordships and landowners and non-landowners and that sort of thing. If you don't understand that we evolved from that politically, that may seem to make more sense. But say, yeah, you can have roads, a private business would build those roads and then they would charge somebody. But if there are people dependent on those roads, who's to say that those road charges don't go up to a point where it's such a high amount that people can't trade without those roads? And you can say, well, employees get paid more because of that, and it becomes a never-ending stupid cycle of us paying for trivial shit. And the only reason that money, I guess you could create a non-fiat system where you depend on gold, but even gold, the value of gold has gone down exponentially as technology has gotten more important and energy has gotten more important. So like, if we had been tied to gold with our currency, it still wouldn't be a good thing. But that's economics, and that's a little bit more advanced than what I'm going to get into here. The idea that political parties are always equal to tribalism. There are a lot of us who very, very loosely tie ourselves to Democratic or Republican parties, and we tie ourselves loosely to those parties because we believe in more than just those things. And the idea that we'd vote for the Cookie Monster, if the Cookie Monster were to run, would be somewhat absurd. See #NeverTrump. To think that we can fix our government with more government is pretty stupid. Somewhat. A lot of the reason why the government is broken in the first place is because we create social programs on the one side, such as education, and then on the other side, so one hand is fighting against the other hand. So one hand creates a social program, the other hand says we should defund the central program and create tax breaks for the rich so that way we can have trickle-down economics. It's not that the government is essentially, or by essence, is how I mean it, that term. broken or fundamentally broken. It can be fixed by creating places and creating systems of, I'm trying to think of the term, creating systems of accountability to make those things work. Let's move forward. I don't have much time. Statism is the deadliest of religions. This is the one that I have the biggest problem with. Religions and states are not the same thing. States are real governments with real people running real things. Religions require some supernatural powers, typically including God and prayer. Also, typically, a lot of scripture that's unfalsifiable, as well as tithing. Tithes are very important for religions, and tithes don't benefit anybody under any circumstances that aren't directly receiving those tithes. I guess there are sometimes that the church will throw a bone or two to the poor, you know. But overall, the government should be more accountable than religions are, and also governments do exist. The idea that we worship flags and troops, we don't worship them, we respect them. I don't. I respect the troops. I don't respect the flag. The flag is what the fuck ever. Troops respect the fact that they go out and fight for an idea that they think is bigger than themselves, even though most people who are going to fight in those wars are very, very unfortunately not educated in what I think is really going on and what I think most people think is really going on. And a large number of people have died for state. But you have to understand that when people form together, like with the early U.S. government, and they volunteer for military, they're protecting their families, they're protecting their land, they're protecting their offspring from what would be an existential threat. So say we had lost the Revolutionary War, many people would have hung for that. And so when they fought in that Civil War to free themselves, they weren't just fighting for statism. Like, statism is a pretty recent thing, at least as intense as it is now. Really, until World War II and the Cold War, America was not this gun-ho pro-Christian thing, and I hope you don't believe that. And then here's where the appeal to emotion becomes a fallacy. We just have to grow up. We have to get past the Democratic Republican parties. They're all evil. They just want more government, more coercion. That's not a very good argument. It's again leaning on people's emotion. I can't even think outside of a religious context what evil is. Like, there's harm. There's definitely people who I'd consider bad, but bad's a fairly loose term in that circumstance. They're bad because they do harm to people, psychologically, physically, etc., etc. So there's my long-ass ramble. I hope that covered some points. And Wayne, I hope that we actually do continue this off of this channel, either in a group hangout or as a series of videos, and maybe a series of videos leading into a group hangout. Who knows? It'll be easier for me to contribute to a back and forth over videos for now, until we decide on a time that we can actually have a back and forth live. And I also think that this will give us more time to research our points if we're having conversations off camera or that aren't live. That's enough for me, though. Thank you guys for watching. Peach, we will see you tomorrow. And Breakfast Clubbers, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and take care until next time.